El Sonido Cancioneros es mayormente en español, but this episode will be in English.
There's a lot of similarities, even though like people might think there are so much difference between Afro-Latin music and mostly Chinese music from Hong Kong. I think like the lyrics and the meaning of the songs and the expressions the way they express in the songs about like emotions and like love and like about life, the meanings of the songs are very similar, and the melodies too, actually. Hi, my name is Gia Fu. I am a salsa collector and DJ from Hong Kong, and this is my Cancionero on KEXP.
Gia Fu is also a music producer in her own right, working with the group Canton Mambo, the project you are listening to right now. Here, the music of her home country, China, blends with Caribbean rhythms like salsa and mambo, all through a modern lens.
It's not just my story, right? One part of how all these influences influence each other, like Afro-Latin influence in Asia or like Asian influence in Latin America or like Caribbean. When I, for example, do the project, I think about like how important it is, because I am trying to move out of my home in Hong Kong and be the first immigrant of my household to move to the US, or trying to find a home closer to the salsa music that I like.
This is El Sonido Cancioneros, the KEXP podcast about Latin American and Ibero-American music and the albums that run through it. My name is Albina Cabrera, and every Monday you will hear conversations with the artists shaping the modern sound of the continent as they share their personal playlist, the records that they grew up with, the ones that moved them, the ones that revealed something essential. These episodes are in Spanish, sometimes in English, and very often in Spanglish. A few years ago, I came across Gia Fu's DJ sets floating the internet. And around the same time, I gained a friend. Diana started hosting Eastern Echoes, KEXP's first show dedicated to modern music from Asia and its diaspora. That's when a beautiful friendship began between these two sibling shows, El Sonido and Eastern Echoes, and so did an ongoing exchange of music. Diana and I have created several episodes together, diving deep into the musical and migratory connections between Asia and Latin America. Together, we have explored Japanese bossa nova,
Bésame, bésame mucho,
and Chinese tango. There is a connection that goes beyond distance and language. This musical bridge isn't new. During the second half of the 20th century, there was a boom of cultural exchange between the Caribbean and Asia. Salsa and mambo resonated in countries like Japan and the Philippines, thanks to musical ambassadors, collectors, and international tours. Gia Fu told me that this movement peaked again around 12-15 years ago. It slowed down after the pandemic, but now it's rising again.
After the albums of Bad Bunny or like Raúl Alejandro, I see a lot of people of younger generations showed up, which like it was like in my last event in New York, 60 to 70% of the attendees of the party that I play at were mostly like younger generations of like at their 20s. Wow. So I was really surprised to see, because normally you don't see that.
Mientras uno está vivo, uno debe amar lo más que pueda.
One of the most influential ambassadors of salsa music in Asia was, without a doubt, Tito Puente. His music didn't just reach the continent. It left a lasting impression of generations of collectors, dancers, and musicians like GFU. In fact, the first track on her personal cancionero is a direct nod to that legacy. Released in 1958 as part of the album Dance Mania, this is Hong Kong Mambo by Tito Puente.
I picked this song because of the title, obviously, because that's where I'm from. And of my own project, which is called Canton Mambo, is like hugely inspired by this title. But obviously I didn't use Hong Kong Mambo and I picked Canton Mambo instead. I'll explain that in a little bit. So the whole project that I was trying to explore the different influences of, for example, Afro-Latin influence in East Asia, especially Chinese-speaking regions, like the records in these kind of regions, and the other way around. When I did the research, I read one article that is about Tito when he was in the US Navy, when he was traveling, had the tour, and he was in Asia, and how he got inspired to do all these songs that has like titles or like sounds, melodies inspired by his trip in Asia. Hong Kong Mambo, maybe you can hear a little bit, I don't know, of Hong Kong in it.
When it comes to salsa made in Asia, one name always comes up: Orquesta de la Luz. This Japanese band broke all the rules in the late 80s and early 90s, singing in Spanish, touring across Latin America, and earning the respect of legends in the genre. For GFU, their presence is inescapable. Wherever she goes, someone always asks about them.
I picked this song because I want to highlight the importance of the orchestras from Japan, because they're really well made and they're the most famous ones from Asia. And wherever I go, people for sure will ask me, "Do you know Orquesta de la Luz?" Like immediately. That's why for sure I have to include one song by them, and that's why I picked Mambo de la Luz. It's also, I think all the songs that I picked this time is more like Latin jazz, like more like instrumental salsa. I think because that's how you can actually focus on like the melody or like the arrangement.
GFU's doesn't just collect records. She's building an archive. In her research, she's made it her mission to document every Afro-Caribbean track that references China, Hong Kong, or any direct connections to Asian culture. Not just passing mentions, but songs that truly speak about people, places, or symbols tied to Asia. Among that collection is this gem. Rush Hour in Hong Kong by Louis Ramirez, released in 1972. Ramirez was one of the great arrangers of the New York salsa scene, and for Gia, one of her all-time favorite artists.
I picked it is because he's one of my favorite salsa artists. He's like really one of my like top three. One of the top three that I really admire. I wish I had the chance to meet him, but yeah, that's why I'm picked this song.
The name Canton Mambo is no coincidence. GFU chose it as a nod to the classical Hong Kong Mambo, but decided not to repeat her city's name. Instead, she went with Canton, the southern region of China where Hong Kong is located and where Cantonese is spoken. A name that honors her identity while opening the door to a musical crossover between cultures and places.
This project is so important for me because since the first day I started being a DJ and a collector, I am very aware that I'm not from this culture. I'm always trying to find a way to show people how much I appreciate this music and the culture and the history behind, but also not forgetting my own roots, I was talking to one of my arrangers that I produced an album for, and I was telling him, I'm like, hey, do you think you can add this Chinese instrument called the guzheng into a descarga? And then he's like, why do you always give me challenges? But I love it. So then we started experimenting, adding Chinese instruments or elements into songs, and that's how the music came up.
With Canton Mambo, GFU is exploring an undocumented space. Her project begins with a powerful question. What does someone listen to when they migrate between cultures? What does identity settle in a new place? Music offers a few clues. It becomes a way to imagine what didn't exist before and to blend what was always understood as a separate.
So when I do this project, I feel like I'm thinking about all these Asian or Chinese diaspora in the Americas. And I would think how all these immigrants, when they move from their home to another country and all they have to do is survive and adapt to another culture, and how can they do that all these years, taught to just put behind our own culture and just survive, or sometimes be ashamed of our own culture, I was thinking how come all these gastronomia, you have the combination of both cultures. And when I try to research on the songs, I cannot find anything that is representing these communities back in the days. And in Asia, all these records that I have is mostly Chinese covers of some Latin songs. Even for example, orchestra from Japan or just in Asia in general, they would just try to sing in Spanish and do their own interpretation of salsa, cha-cha-cha and everything. But I can never really find a mix, a fusion until recent years. So that's why I was thinking what would they listen to as a Chinese immigrant in the Americas? Do they just listen to Chinese music, or do they just listen to Latin music or wherever that they are? So I'm what's the balance? What's the middle point? So that's why when I do the music production of the Canton Mambo projects, that's one of the main focus, one of the main reason to motivation for me to do.
The next song is a tribute to many layers of GFU's story: her childhood, her mother, Chinese folk dance, the diaspora, and transformation itself.
Lotus is the second track that I did. It was with one of the legendary musicians and artists in New York. His name is Ricky Gonzalez. And then I also feature one of the another legend in the salsa scene, timbalero Nicky Marrero. The whole song came up is because I was listening to because my mom, she was not just a social dance teacher, she was also a Chinese folk dance teacher. China has 56 ethnic groups, so there are so many different style of music there. I came across with one song called the Midu Mountain Song. It's a very famous folklore song in one of the regions in China. And I was talking to Ricky, and then I was like, do you think we can sample this song and build a song on top, like as like kind of like a salsa song? And then obviously it's another challenge, so we started to do it, and it worked. Then lotus also has a very special meaning in Asian culture, which is the flower that is born from the mud, which is like, but like no mud, no flowers. You know what I mean?
Gia's Fu's love for Latin American culture began when she was very young, but her archaeological curiosity has always been tied to how people and their music migrate, adapt, and bloom in faraway places. Up next, you will hear the full version of Lotus by Gia Fu. This was the episode 7 of the new season of El Sonido Cancioneros. I'm Albina Cabrera, and I invite you to follow and subscribe to this weekly journey of songs, memories, and voices. Remember, KEXP is a listener-powered radio station. If this story resonated with you, consider making a donation at kexp.org/El Sonido. Deb Vázquez González was our production assistant. Dustin Henry handled editorial editing, and our editorial director is Larry Meisel Jr. This episode was edited and mastered by Jackson Long, along with me, Albina Cabrera, your host and friend. Talk to you soon, amigos. New episodes every Monday, wherever you get your podcasts. An original production by KEXP, where the music matters.